Committee will come to order. Welcome to all. Before giving my formal opening statement, I want to let members know how we'll proceed this morning. I also want to thank Senator Heinrich and his staff for working with us on the schedule for today's activities, and thanks to all senators for being here and for your staffs. Respecting the time demands on the schedule of every senator serving on the committee meets today for a business meeting to vote on 3 nominations, followed by a hearing on 4 more nominations, 1 with the Department of the Interior and 3 at the Department of Energy. Now, all 3 of the nominees to be considered at today's business meeting submitted timely answers to the senators' questions for the record of our hearing. Consequently, each one was listed on the agenda that the committee's clerk sent around to your offices this last Friday, the 9th of May. First, we'll vote on the nomination of Mr. William Duffenmeyer. Second, we'll vote on the nomination of Ms. Catherine Herreza. And third, we'll vote on the nomination of Kyle Hosfite. Each of these nominees is well qualified and has my full support. As soon as we have a voting reporting quorum present, then at that point I'm going to ask the committee to vote on the nominations. After the votes, I'll recognize any member who may wish to speak on any of the nominees. I continue to be grateful to the senators on this committee for keeping their remarks brief and request that we continue that practice today if we can, so that we can proceed promptly to the hearing thereafter. And at this point, because we don't yet have the voting quorum present, let's see, jump to the, So while we wait for a quorum to form, for the hearing. Yeah. So what we're going to be doing today in the hearing portion, as opposed to the business meeting portion of the meeting, let me describe that in a moment. This is the 7th hearing for this Congress on this committee, and we're going to hear testimony today from 4 distinguished Americans who have been nominated by President Trump for senior offices within our committee's jurisdiction, 1 at the Department of the Interior and 3 at the Department of Energy. I'm grateful to the President for sending us all these nominees. First, we'll hear from Mr. Jonathan Brightbill, who's been nominated to be the General Counsel of the Department of Energy. The General Counsel is the chief legal officer of that department, providing legal counsel and advice to the Secretary and other officers at the department, as well as its many components, ensuring that the department carries out its duties, responsibilities in accordance with the law. Attorneys from the General Counsel's office represent the department in various matters and work in partnership with attorneys in the Department of Justice to represent the Department of Energy whenever it ends up in court. The General Counsel team also assists in drafting and reviewing legislation, regulations, and contracts, as well as upholding the department's ethical obligations. Mr. Brightbill is a partner at Winston & Strawn, LLP, and happens to be the chair of the firm's environmental litigation and enforcement practice. From 2017 to 2021, he served in the Department of Justice's Environment and Natural Resources Division, known as ENRD, successively as Deputy Assistant Attorney General, Principal Assistant Attorney General, and Acting Assistant Attorney General. Only in a department of lawyers can you have so many acronyms that themselves have their own familiar abbreviations. But it's one of the things that they're known for, in addition to having outstanding lawyers. In that role, he managed more than 425 attorneys, handling roughly 6,500 active matters, argued precedent-setting cases, and oversaw enforcement actions under the Clean Air Act, CERCLA, and a number of other environmental statutes. Mr. Brightbill was previously a partner at Kirkland & Ellis and clerked for Judge D. Brooks Smith on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. He holds a Juris Doctorate, magna cum laude from Georgetown University Law Center, and a Bachelor of Science, cum laude, in economics from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Second, we'll hear from Ms. Tina Pierce to be the Chief Financial Officer of the Department of Energy. The CFO ensures the effective management and financial integrity of Department of Energy programs, activities, and resources. She develops, implements, and monitors policies, procedures, and systems regarding budgets, appropriations, finance, and accounting. Ms. Pierce is currently the Deputy Chief Financial Officer at the Department of Defense, advising the Pentagon's CFO. She directs policy development, audit readiness and remediation, enterprise risk management and production of the DoD agency financial report, and oversees the DoD's internal control and payment integrity programs. She previously served as Chief of Financial Reporting and Compliance at the Defense Health Agency. An Idaho native, she served as a Marine Corps officer, attaining the rank of captain. Between her military service and her return to federal service as a civilian in 2018, she held finance and accounting leadership posts in both the public and private sectors across the United States and Europe, with expertise spanning information technology, energy, education, and consulting. Appointed to the Senior Executive Service in August of 2020, Ms. Pierce earned a Bachelor of Science in Accounting from the University of Utah and an MBA from Colorado State University. She's a CPA and a Certified Defense Financial Manager, Level 3. Her 22 military decorations include the Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal, Sea Service Deployment Ribbon, membership in Beta Gamma Sigma International Business Honor Society, and the Office of Secretary of Defense Medal for Exceptional Civilian Service. Third, we'll hear from Mr. Connor Prohaska to be the Director of the Advanced Research Energy Agency, also known as ARPA-E. ARPA-E enhances the economic and energy security mission and technological leadership of the United States through the development of advanced energy technology. It's kind of the launch pad for new companies and major industry advancements, and was founded to preserve America's technological edge in this area. It's advancing state-of-the-art in energy, science, and engineering, and defining new opportunities for commercialization of advanced energy technologies. Mr. Prohaska currently serves as Senior Advisor at the Department of Energy. He was previously DOE's Chief Commercialization Officer and Director of the Office of Technology Transitions, or OTT, guiding all technology transfer and commercialization activities across DOE's 17 national laboratories, production sites, and research centers. He also served as Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor at ARPA-E, where he managed day-to-day operations and helped shape the agency's transformational research and development portfolio. Mr. Prohaska began his career as an intelligence officer in the United States Navy, attaining the rank of lieutenant while assigned to the Center for Combating Weapons of Mass Destruction. His military decorations include the Joint Service Commendation Medal, Navy Marine Corps Achievement Medal, Joint Meritorious Unit Award, National Defense Service Medal, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, Sea Service Deployment Ribbon, and a whole bunch of others. He's got a very impressive background. He graduated from Texas A&M University with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, was elected Student Body President, and was inducted into the General O.R. Simpson Corps Honor Society. He later received his law degree from the Georgetown University Law School. Finally today, we'll hear from Dr. Ned Mamula to be the Director of the U.S. Geological Survey within the Department of Interior. Dr. Mamula has over 35 years' experience in the fields of energy and mineral exploration, production, and resource policy. He has experience both in the federal government and in private industry, as well as academia, with critical and strategic minerals, oil, gas, shale oil and gas, natural gas, hydrates, coal, and uranium. During his long career, he's worked at chief geologist at GreenMet, a company focused on achieving mineral security, and owned and worked at Terra Dynamics Corporation. And then from 2019 to 2023, Dr. Mamula directed the Critical Mineral and Rare Earth Program for Leonardo Technologies on contract with the U.S. Department of Energy. Dr. Mamula has considerable experience at the U.S. Geological Survey, the entity that now he's been asked to lead by President Trump, having served the agency as research geologist both from 2007 to 2009 and earlier in his career from 1977 to 1987. He was only 12 years old at the time, a prodigy, I'm told. He also served in the Central Intelligence Agency as a geoscientist and intelligence analyst from 2009 to 2015. At the CIA, Dr. Mamula received the Deputy Director of Intelligence Medal of Service in Afghanistan and multiple exceptional performance awards for superior accomplishment and valuable service. He also previously served as geoscientist at the Department of Homeland Security, where he received a Meritorious Service Award for providing intelligence support for U.S. Coast Guard and DHS operations and interagency coordination, as well as a commendation for meritorious service, while fulfilling a broad spectrum of intelligence support missions. He also received the Assistant Commandant for Intelligence Performance Award. A Pennsylvania native, Dr. Mamula received a Bachelor of Science in Geology from Slippery Rock University in 1973 and later received a Master of Science in Geosciences from Penn State University in 1980. Dr. Mamula also earned a PhD in Geosciences from Texas A&M University in 1986 and a Master of International Public Policy and Strategic Resources from Johns Hopkins University in 2005. All the nominees who we'll hear from today are well qualified for the offices for which they've been nominated, and they represent exactly the type of bold leadership that America needs uniquely right now. Yeah, let's do that. All right, we're almost to the point where we have a voting quorum present. I'll ask now. Yeah.
You just don't have enough yeses.
Yeah, that's right.
It's different.
The ranking member is correct. We don't have the votes that we need yet. So, yeah, we're almost there. Ooh, almost there. I'll ask Ranking Member Heinrich if he'd like to make an opening statement. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairman Lee, and welcome, Mr. Brightbill, Ms. Pierce, Mr. Prohaska, and Dr. Mamula. Confirmation hearings enable senators to advise and consent on presidential nominations. They also remind us of the great breadth and importance of the functions that we entrust to presidential appointees. The nominations before us this morning are no exceptions. Today, we have 3 nominees before us who have been nominated to important positions at the Department of Energy. I want to hear from today's nominees about how they plan to use their positions to do good for the American people. At the very minimum, that is what we should want, what we should demand from our public servants. That is not what we are seeing currently at DOE. In the last few days, DOE announced plans to cut dozens of energy efficiency rules that have saved consumers hundreds of dollars a year on their utility bills. The administration claims it is cutting red tape. Instead, we are seeing it stop real progress. The President has nominated Mr. Brightbill to be General Counsel at the Department. The General Counsel is the chief lawyer for the Department. The Department's General Counsel must not only be a skilled advocate, but also a wise counselor. He is the keeper of the agency's conscience who ensures that the Department follows the law, upholds the Constitution, and protects the public interest. The President has nominated Ms. Pierce to be the Department's Chief Financial Officer. The CFO is the guardian of the public's money within the Department, who ensures that it is properly obligated and dispersed as Congress has directed in the law. The President has nominated Mr. Prohaska to be the Director of the Advanced Research Project Agency, or ARPA-E, as it is known here. ARPA-E is our investment in the future. Its mission is to overcome barriers to developing transformative science and technology solutions to our energy and environmental problems. My colleagues are fond of talking about energy dominance. Dinosaurs were once dominant, not so much today. We will not remain a great nation by clinging to the past. If we want to remain dominant, we must embrace the future and invest in it today. ARPA-E is our investment in the future scientific advances that will ensure our scientific and technological dominance into the 22nd century and beyond. Finally, the President has nominated Dr. Mamula to lead the U.S. Geological Survey. The USGS is our nation's trusted source on data on natural hazards, weather, water, ecosystems, and our mineral wealth. It must remain nonpartisan and independent, and the integrity of its science is essential for informed decision-making across the government and industry alike. Dr. Mamula has stated he plans to shrink the agency's mission and has dismissed conservation efforts and public land withdrawals as a left-wing tool to block mining. Additionally, some of his past statements, particularly his accusation that hostile foreign entities fund domestic environmental lawsuits, raise questions about how he would uphold USGS's commitment to impartial, science-based work. The USGS should not be turned into a vehicle for deregulation or industry favoritism. We need a director who will defend its core mission, not politicize it. I look forward to hearing from each of our witnesses this morning, and I appreciate their willingness to take on these important and challenging responsibilities. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks so much, Senator Heinrich. We'll now proceed to the business meeting as part of today's hearing. And we'll turn first to the nomination of Mr. William Doffenmeyer to be the solicitor at the U.S. Department of the Interior. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Lee.
Aye.
Mr. Barrasso.
Aye.
Mr. Risch. Mr. Daines. Mr. Cotton. Mr. McCormick. Mr. Justice. Mr. Cassidy. Ms. Hyde-Smith. Ms. Murkowski. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Heinrich. Mr. Wyden. Ms. Cantwell.
No by proxy.
Ms. Hirono.
No by proxy.
Mr. King.
Yes by proxy.
Ms. Cortez Masto.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hickenlooper. Mr. Padilla.
No by proxy.
Mr. Gallego.
No by proxy.
On this vote, the ayes are 12 and the nays are 8.
The nomination is agreed to and is ordered to be reported favorably to the Senate. We'll now turn to the nomination of Ms. Catherine Hareza to be Assistant Secretary of Energy for Electricity. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Lee.
Aye.
Mr. Barrasso.
Aye.
Mr. Risch. Mr. Daines. Mr. Cotton. Mr. McCormick. Mr. Justice. Mr. Cassidy. Ms. Hyde-Smith. Ms. Murkowski. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Heinrich.
No.
Mr. Wyden.
No by proxy.
Ms. Cantwell.
No by proxy.
Ms. Hirono.
No by proxy.
Mr. King.
Senator King will abstain pending his afternoon meeting with Ms. Hareza later today.
Ms. Cortez Masto.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hickenlooper. Mr. Padilla.
No by proxy.
Mr. Gallego.
No by proxy.
On this vote, the ayes are 11 and the nays are 8.
The nomination is agreed to and ordered to be reported favorably to the Senate. And finally, we turn to the nomination of Mr. Kyle Hosfite to be Assistant Secretary of Energy for Fossil Energy. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Lee.
Aye.
Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Risch. Mr. Daines. Mr. Cotton. Mr. McCormick. Mr. Justice. Mr. Cassidy. Ms. Hyde-Smith. Ms. Murkowski, Mr. Hoven, Mr. Heinrich,
Aye.
Mr. Wyden,
No by proxy.
Ms. Cantwell,
No by proxy.
Ms. Hirono,
No by proxy.
Mr. King,
No by proxy.
Ms. Cortez Masto,
No by proxy.
Mr. Hickenlooper, Mr. Padilla,
No by proxy.
Mr. Gallego.
No by proxy.
On this vote, the ayes are 12 and the nays are 8.
The nomination is agreed to and is ordered to be reported favorably to the Senate. At this point, before we...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Does Ms. Cortez Masto, do you want to be recorded as present and voting?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
At this point, before we close the business portion of the meeting and proceed to the hearing of our nominees that we'll hear from today, the chair will recognize any senators who want to speak briefly about the nominees who we've just voted out of the committee and reported favorably to the Senate floor. Anyone seek recognition? Senator Justice.
I'd like to just say this, that I'm very, very proud of who we just voted for and everything, and especially this young lady from my hometown. That's all I've got, sir.
Thank you, Senator Justice. Any other members? Okay. If not, we will proceed to our hearing. Just one moment. Again, I want to thank members for being here promptly so we can get through those votes. All right, so let's turn to the hearing today. The world's in a race. It's a race for resources, for technological supremacy, for control over the supply chains that power our daily lives. In this race, there are no consolation prizes. America will either lead or it will be led by powers that don't always share our interests or our values. Unfortunately, we've experienced painfully what happens when energy policy is driven by ideology rather than reality. Rolling blackouts, soaring prices, families struggling at the gas pump. American workers have been outsourced. Our mineral resources are locked away with producers forced to jump through decades of procedural hoops, all while China tightens its grip on global supply chains. This is not the America we believe in. We believe in an America where our energy isn't hostage to foreign interests, where innovation is rewarded, and where workers lead the world, our workers. That's why we're here today. We're assembling a dream team, a roster of American patriots who know the stakes are high and can outwork, outsmart, and outlast America's adversaries. Each of these nominees will be responsible for critical roles in our energy future, overseeing the legal strategy of the Department of Energy, ensuring financial integrity across multi-billion-dollar energy programs, driving groundbreaking research at ARPA-E, and securing our critical minerals through the U.S. Geological Survey. Their decisions will impact everything from keeping the lights on in American homes to unlocking the next generation of energy innovations. These are not ceremonial posts. These are positions of consequence. We on this committee are processing nominees more than 3 times faster than the last Congress. By the close of this hearing, we will have reported 16 critical energy leaders reported out of this committee compared to just 4 at this point in 2021. We know what's at stake, and that's why we're moving fast. and we're moving at a breakneck speed because America can't afford to wait, and our leadership on the world stage cannot be taken for granted. It must be earned, secured, and defended every single day. Our adversaries are watching. They, of course, hope that we'll fumble, that we turn inward, that we abandon the competitive edge that has made America the global leader. We won't give them that satisfaction. We must not. We'll lead with strength, with resolve, and with an unshakable commitment to American energy dominance. American energy dominance means American security, American jobs, American leadership. It means no more pleading with global adversaries, no more dependency on unreliable supply chain, and no more surrendering our future to global competitors. America's energy future must be American-made. That means putting leaders in place who understand our resources are a strength, our workers are an asset, and our technology is unmatched. We have the resources, we have the talent, we have the will. Soon, we'll have the team to reclaim our position as the global energy superpower.
Mr. Chair, I would say that the reality is that the Department of Energy is hobbling our energy leadership, and this administration is sidelining the majority of our energy projects, killing jobs, for example, the Empire Wind Project, which was fully permitted, and raising energy costs on consumers. This is threatening our leadership, not only in the field of energy, but also in artificial intelligence. So I look forward to hearing from our nominees today on how they would manage these positions.
Thank you, Senator Heinrich. Look forward to hearing from them well, and having spent time with them, I'm confident that each of them will serve our country very, very well. Now, the rules of the committee require that all nominees be sworn in connection with their testimony. So if you'll all rise and raise your right hand. You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to provide to the committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. And then we'll have you begin your opening statements in a moment, but before we do that, I ask the witnesses 3 questions that are posed to all nominees appearing before this committee. First, will you be available to appear before this committee and other congressional committees to represent departmental positions and respond to issues of concern to Congress?
Yes.
Second, are you aware of any personal holdings, investments, or interests that could constitute a conflict of interest or create the appearance of such conflict should you be confirmed and assume the office to which you've been nominated by the President of the United States?
No.
No, Senator.
And third, are you involved in or do you have any assets in a blind trust?
No.
Okay. We'll note here for the record that each nominee responded in the affirmative to the first question and in the negative to the 2 subsequent questions. Now, as I turn to the witnesses, we'll have each of you speak for 5 minutes, starting with Mr. Brightbill and moving to my right, your left, in that order. And as you do so, I invite you, as you may prefer, to introduce any family members who may be here with you today. We'll start with you, Mr. Brightbill.
Thank you, Chairman Lee, Ranking Member Heinrich, and distinguished members of the committee. It is an honor to appear before you today as President Trump's nominee for General Counsel of the Department of Energy. I'm deeply grateful to President Trump and Secretary Wright for this nomination, recognizing that under our Constitution, your advice and consent are essential for me to assume this position of trust. I look forward to today's hearing and any further discussions that may be needed, and I hope to earn your support. I want to thank my family who have supported me and tolerated the long hours and frequent absences that my work has required over the years. Thank you foremost to my wife, Nicole, who manages to balance everything in our family, in addition to her own demanding professional obligations. I want to recognize my children, Tamsin, finishing her junior year in high school, Chip, a freshman, and Davis, our 5th grader. Every day, these three blessings from God remind me of the greatness and the promise of America and inspire me to do what I do. One of the most unexpectedly difficult questions I received during this process was to identify the state from which I hail. Having lived in Virginia for 20 years now, with my 3 children born and raised there, I responded the Commonwealth of Virginia. I somewhat regret having done so because I was born and raised in Lebanon County, Pennsylvania, and really consider myself, like Senator McCormick, a proud son of that other great Commonwealth. With me today as well is the Honorable David Chip Brightbill, my father, and my stepmother, the Honorable Donna Long Brightbill, whose own dedication to public service in Pennsylvania inspired me to that same call here today. With 1 senator and 1 judge already in the family, that left the only option open for me to maintain the Constitution's separation of powers was to pursue service in the executive branch. I also want to thank my mother, Carol, back home in Pennsylvania, though she could not be here today, as well as my brother, Christian, for coming down from Pittsburgh to help. I also want to thank Deputy Secretary Danley for his role, including me as part of the great team that he and Secretary Wright are assembling for the Department of Energy. I asked for this committee's support because I think I can help the Department of Energy and the country at this moment when I think that there is a bipartisan consensus that the United States needs more energy to meet our challenges in the world. My training to help address these challenges began at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business, where I concentrated on public policy and management. My first public service was as an executive policy specialist for Pennsylvania Governor Tom Ridge at his Department of Environmental Protection. There I traveled the state and learned so much about the energy industry so critical to the economy of that state and this country, and first cut my teeth on the many public policy issues still impacting energy development. After graduating magna cum laude from Georgetown University Law Center, I clerked on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit for the Honorable D. Brooks Smith, and for my first 15 years, I practiced law in D.C. here at Kirkland & Ellis, before joining the Department of Justice in 2017. At the Environment and Natural Resources Division, I first had the privilege of working with the Department of Energy's General Counsel, including Bill Cooper, as well as many other officials there, like Ted Garish, Eric Fibby, and others, effectively in the role of outside counsel to the Department of Energy across a range of matters. DOJ was also my first opportunity to serve as a senior manager in government, where I helped lead ENRD's 425 lawyers and 600 employees, managing 6,500 active matters, cases, investigations, and the like, and a budget of $150 million a year. Over the last 4 years, I've been privileged to be a partner at the law firm of Winston & Strawn here in D.C., where my practice has continued to include many energy industry clients and matters across the range of energy technologies and across different areas of the energy sector. If confirmed as General Counsel, it would be my privilege to assist President Trump and Secretary Wright in achieving their vision of American energy dominance. I would also looking forward to working with this committee and Congress and other stakeholders to undertake sound energy policy reforms to our laws, regulations, and programs to advance the interests of the American people first, but ultimately through American greatness and leadership to better all human lives. Thank you again for the honor to appear before you here today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Brightbill. We'll hear now from Ms. Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Heinrich, and members of the committee for the opportunity to appear before you today as President Trump's nominee for Chief Financial Officer at the Department of Energy. Before I begin my official remarks, I would like to introduce the members of my family who have joined me here today. My husband of 26 years, Scott Pierce, who is a retired Marine colonel and someone who, at the age of 19, worked in the oil fields of Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, and North Dakota. My stepdaughter, Elisa, son, Thomas, and daughter, Isabel. I would also like to recognize my son, Jackson, daughter-in-law, Ellen, and my amazing parents, Robert and Judy Morgan, who are unable to be here today. I'm honored to be nominated by the President and humbled to be considered by the Senate for an office of such great trust and responsibility to the American people, and if confirmed, to play a role in unleashing American energy dominance to better all human lives. Energy Secretary Wright asked me what I would consider success if I were to be nominated and confirmed as an Energy Department CFO. My answer was simple: to provide the Secretary with timely and accurate financial information that allows him to make prudent, well-informed decisions so that we can legally and responsibly steward the taxpayer dollars that the Congress entrusts to us to advance America's energy interests. I'd like to share with you a little bit of the story that brought me here today. I grew up on a small farm in Rigby, Idaho. I am the first person in my family to earn a college degree. I studied accounting on a Naval ROTC scholarship at the University of Utah. Eager for challenge and discipline, I chose to serve in the United States Marines after graduation. The Marine Corps wisely put this round peg in a round hole, making me a financial management officer. I proudly led Marines in Hawaii and California and deployed to Kuwait as a comptroller for the contingency Operation Desert Thunder. I left active duty. A month later, exchanged wedding vows, and 2 days later, my husband Scott and I were on our way to his next assignment in the Netherlands. As a wife of a Marine infantry officer and a mom of 3, every couple of years I had to pick up our house and kids, often by myself, quit my job, and start over someplace new. And through it all, I was able to continue to pursue my professional passion, using accounting to drive business decisions. In Europe, I worked as a financial manager in a multinational IT firm. In North Carolina, we experienced the shock of 9/11. My husband deployed to the Middle East, and I was called back to active duty. In Kansas, I earned an MBA from Colorado State University and graduating at the top of my class and staying on as a remote instructor, a job I could take with me. In the Sierra of Eastern California, I commuted over an 8,000-foot mountain pass with morning sickness and altitude sickness to serve as a county deputy controller. And in Southern California, I worked in the energy sector as a senior financial analyst for a nuclear generation plant and a major public utility. I became and am a certified public accountant. When the Marine Corps brought us to Washington, D.C., we decided it was time to give our children the stability that we had had when we grew up. So we settled down. I started over as a junior contractor, reviewing Army pay records on a laptop at a crowded conference room table with 20 other analysts. I was soon recruited to work on the Air Force Health Services financial remediation team and then entered the federal workforce at the Defense Health Agency. My performance at DHA led to a senior executive position with the Department of the Air Force, overseeing financial operations and audit remediation. Since July of last year, I have served as the Deputy Chief Financial Officer at the Department of Defense, where we have made great strides to bringing the entire department closer to a clean audit opinion. If confirmed, I look forward to bringing my broad financial experience in both government and the private sector to the Department of Energy. If confirmed, I pledge that I will apply the highest standards of fiduciary responsibility for the funds entrusted by this Congress. I will do everything in my power to work with this committee and Congress to facilitate the oversight required by our Constitution. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to answering any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Mr. Prakash.
Chairman Lee, Ranking Member Heinrich, and distinguished members of the committee. It is an honor and a privilege to appear here today as President Trump's nominee to serve as Director of the Advanced Research Projects Agency at the Department of Energy, or ARPA-E. I'd like to thank President Trump and Secretary Wright for their confidence and trust that they have placed in me with this nomination. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce the most important people in my life, my family. Here today with me is the love of my life, who is the most amazing wife, mother, and true life partner I could ever imagine. Kate, I am in awe of your ability to balance a successful career and provide a loving home for our family. I love you and thank you. Also here today is my 4-year-old son, Crawford, and who you've already heard from, my 2-year-old daughter, Henley. They are the light of my life, and my world spins around them whether I want it to or not. I'd also like to recognize my parents who have joined us from Texas. They've protected and provided and guided me throughout my life. Mom and Dad, the words thank you can never express the gratitude I have for the sacrifices you both made to raise me and my 3 amazing brothers, Frankie, Tate, and Joey, who are home with their families in Texas watching. I'd like to thank the Honorable Paul DeBar for attending and for all those that texted their support over the last few days for this effort. It means the world. As an Eagle Scout from a patriotic family, I was instilled with a sense of service at a young age. The sense of service was further ingrained during my time at Texas A&M, where the core values of excellence, integrity, leadership, loyalty, respect, and selfless service are paramount, and I strive to live every day. My love for the United States led me to be commissioned in the United States Navy, where I saw firsthand the devastating effects of energy scarcity. The Navy is also where I was first acquainted with the DOE through the nuclear weapons program as a counter-weapons of mass destruction intelligence officer. Following law school, I was honored to serve in President Trump's first term as ARPA-E's Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor, ushering in many of the programs and projects which exist today at ARPA-E, including the first nuclear technology projects. After my time at ARPA-E, I was privileged to be selected as the department's first Chief Commercialization Officer and also the Director of the Office of Technology Transitions. In this role, I worked closely with this committee and staff on ushering DOE technology out of labs and into the daily lives of Americans, maximizing their impact from Augusta to Albuquerque to Anchorage. Following my time at DOE, I continued my career in emerging technologies as I helped co-found a quantum technology company spun out of Caltech. If confirmed, it will be a true humbling honor to lead the talented, innovative, and dedicated team at ARPA-E. When I left ARPA-E to become the department's Chief Commercialization Officer, I told the staff that the fact that my name would be associated with theirs and the organization was one of the proudest accomplishments of my professional career, and I feel the same today. As members of this committee and staff are well aware, energy and critical technologies are at an inflection point. Quantum, artificial intelligence, fusion, small modular reactors, geothermal, the list can go on. But these technologies will fundamentally change how the country and the world consume and produce energy. The Department of Energy's role in advancing these technologies through our work with national labs, industry partners, and the university ecosystem has never been more critical. ARPA-E is uniquely positioned to lead on high-risk, high-reward research, leading to technological developments that will better human lives throughout the United States and across the globe. The Trump administration's forward-leaning approach to innovation and technology will require an interagency effort to ensure the United States continues to spearhead energy and critical and emerging technologies around the world. ARPA-E's unique authorities and structure will allow for flexibility and nimble action to address these challenges in a timely and effective manner. If confirmed, I intend to work closely with this committee and Congress to effectively and efficiently lead ARPA-E and its talented and dedicated staff, who I consider the elite of the energy research community, to help drive innovation, maintain American leadership in critical technology areas, and unleash American dominance. Chairman, under Secretary's Wright leadership, we will not fumble. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to appear before you today. I look forward to your questions.
Thanks so much, Mr. Prohaska. Dr. Mamula, we'll hear from you next.
Chairman Lee and Ranking Member Heinrich and committee members all. Good morning, and thank you very, very much for your time and the opportunity to be in front of this committee. I am very honored and humbled to be here and very proud of the agency that I have been nominated to lead, the U.S. Geological Survey. My deepest thanks to Secretary Burgum and President Trump for the confidence they have reposed in me. And Mr. Chairman, behind me are my wife, Terry, my son, Noah, and his wife, Mariah. My son, Aaron, is joining us remotely, and my friend J.J. Brown is with us as well. And they have been a great source of strength. But for me, the path to today has been basically an incredible personal and professional journey, starting out as a steel worker in my native Pittsburgh before attending college, becoming an entry-level geologist, and later in the energy industry all over the country and the world. My academic work included major research and studies in Iceland and later in Wyoming's Bighorn Basin, and part of my training at Penn State and Texas A&M universities, two of our country's premier geology programs. Years later, I was privileged to help stand up a new mineral sustainability division within DOE Fossil Energy, established for the purpose of characterizing ore deposits for their critical mineral and rare earth content. Then, for the past 3 years, I have been serving as chief geologist at GreenMet. Finally, Mr. Chairman, my co-author Ann Bridges and I produced 2 recent thought-provoking books on the issue of America's critical mineral import dependence and our desperately needed path to mineral independence. Mr. Chairman, I am ready for this next assignment at the Geological Survey, should I be confirmed. That agency, the U.S. Geological Survey, or the Survey, as we USGS veterans affectionately call it, is one of the oldest and most storied of our federal agencies. It's 150 years old. The success of our 4 great geological surveys of the American West during the 1870s provided the impetus for President Rutherford Hayes to sign on March 3, 1879, the congressional bill appropriating money for the formation of the U.S. Geological Survey within the Department of the Interior. President Hayes' signature approved the Organic Act of the U.S. Geological Survey, a unique combination of mission responsibilities elegantly described in only 19 words, which are classification of the public lands, examination of the geological structure, mineral resources, and products of the national domain. These Organic Act functions were critical in 1879 because the federal government had title to more than 1 billion acres of land across the West, and of which only 200 million acres, or about 17%, had been surveyed. But after decades of adding more states and more federal lands, approximately 4/5 or 80% of our country still does not have geological map coverage at a scale that is necessary for detailed exploration of minerals and other resources. Therefore, we can appreciate more fully the absolute importance of the USGS Organic Act today and the need to laser focus our attention on the hard work of geologic mapping, discovery of energy and mineral resources, and inventorying other products or endowments of our national domain. Mr. Chairman, the USGS appears to be more important today than it was in 1879, particularly given the recent explosion of demand for energy, critical minerals, rare earth elements, and technology metals. And not to mention America's very, very risky critical mineral import over reliance, much of it from adversarial nations. Little wonder America's national security and economic stability will remain highly dependent on the original mission of the U.S. Geological Survey. As our Secretary, Doug Burgum, says, map, baby, map. And he is absolutely correct, because the all-important geologic mapping must always precede the long road of exploration, discovery, and startup production of energy and minerals. Therefore, the survey needs to dramatically reinforce its institutional strength in mapping across geology, but the other core missions too. Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, leading one of our nation's preeminent scientific agencies has never been and will never be easy. But my love for it and support for it, and the strong support of my USGS colleagues, my fellow scientists, and others will be extremely helpful should I be confirmed. Furthermore, I pledge to this committee, to Secretary Burgum, and especially to President Trump, who graciously nominated me to this post, to uphold the USGS mission to the best of my ability. Mr. Chairman, with that, I look forward to your committee's questions.
Thank you, Dr. Mamula. I like your description, by the way, of the survey. The insiders call it the survey.
The
Reminds
survey.
me of, I had a friend years ago who was a big fan of Mountain Dew, and I asked him whether he agreed with the assessment that it was the nectar of the gods, and his response was curious, reminded me of what you just said. He said, yes, but the gods just call it nectar because to them that's what it is. The survey it is. All right, we'll now begin alternating rounds of 5-minute questions. Republicans, then Democrats, in order of seniority, subject to the early bird rule. And I'll begin. Mr. Brightbill, why don't we start with you? Let's talk about NEPA for a moment. NEPA is a significant law and one that has to be followed. It requires agencies to, quote, ensure that presently unquantified environmental amenities and values may be given appropriate consideration in decision-making along with economic and technical considerations. That's from NEPA, Section 102, of course. Now, some NEPA experts argue, based on the plain text of that if a cooperating agency is substantively analyzing an environmental effect so that it can issue a permit, let's say, for example, a 404 permit under the Clean Water Act, then the agency need not assess the effects of the action on the waters covered by the 404 permit because those effects are not presently unquantified, or to whatever degree and whatever circumstances in which they're not presently unquantified. I know that you're no stranger to NEPA, having worked previously in various government and private sector positions in the law, working in this area, so I'd welcome your thoughts on this observation.
Yes, thank you very much, Senator. And first of all, thank you very much for taking the time on Monday evening to meet with me prior to the hearing today. And as you know, based on our discussions, I absolutely agree that NEPA reform is a critical need for us to ultimately move forward in our reform of infrastructure and advancement of energy. I know a variety of bills have been circulated and proposals circulated on the Hill, but as someone who's both worked in government, litigating a tremendous volume of NEPA cases, candidly, when you're in the federal government and at the Environment and Natural Resources Division, as well as an individual who's litigated NEPA over the years on behalf of private entities and consulted many, many more than I've even actually litigated. There's a lot of talk about permitting reform. Permitting reform is really a euphemism when you actually go and you talk to industry players about the risks for NEPA reform. And NEPA reform really ought to be a euphemism for NEPA litigation reform, because it is the NEPA litigation that creates the unquantifiable and uncalculable risk of undertaking NEPA. Based on my many years of experience working both with federal agencies as well as private sector entities, they are happy to try to quantify risks and assess risks, but ultimately the real problem with NEPA is the unknowable back-end tail that comes from a judicial review system that's been created by common law rather than really by a congressionally designed review apparatus, Senator. And as you and I discussed, I think that that's an area where there is a lot of opportunity for reform that could advance all manner of energy infrastructure projects, transmission, generation, distribution throughout.
Right. Great observation. So it's more than just permitting. Very often, more specifically, people are referring to NEPA. And when they're referring to the delays they encounter, those are more often the result of the litigation stage rather than the pre-issuance of the record of decision stage. That's helpful. Mr. Prohaska, let's turn to you next. During the first Trump administration, you were Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor for ARPA-E, the entity to which you've now been nominated. As I understand it, in the past, ARPA-E has funded R&D within the nuclear space, and if we're to meet the significant anticipated demand for baseload electric power in the coming decade, innovations in the nuclear sector could play a really critical role. Can you talk to us a little bit about the work of ARPA-E, things that ARPA-E funded during the first Trump administration to increase efficiency and output of traditional generating resources, such as nuclear?
Thank you very much for the question, Chairman, and thank you also for the time in your office. It was very valuable to hear your insights on RPE and where we can go with the energy dominance that we're looking for. It was a privilege in my in the first Trump administration to be part of the leadership team of RPE, and in that role, we were one of the proudest programs and projects we started was a project that was about advanced reactors and understanding and simulating and testing some of the more untraditional problems that come with those advanced reactors. But one of the key things that we did there was we worked with the Office of Nuclear Energy to make sure that we weren't duplicating effort within the department. And I think one of the things that I would look forward to, if confirmed for RPE, is because of my knowledge from my time at OTT and Chief Commercialization Officer at the department, I worked with every single office and every single lab at the Department of Energy. And I know the complex to a very, very good degree. And I come into RPE with eyes wide open of what RPE's capabilities are, what other offices in the department do, and how we can help to work on the advanced high-risk, high-research, high-risk, high-reward items that need to be attacked, whether it's in nuclear, whether it's in fossil energy, whether it's in fusion, whether it's in small modular reactors, which is nuclear, but geothermal, you can go through the list. But the RPE portfolio is broad, the authorities are broad, and we intend, if and confirmed, I intend to make sure that we attack all of those technologies as best as we possibly can.
Great, thank you. I've got more questions, including for the other two who I haven't asked questions to yet. We'll hopefully be able to get to those in a subsequent round later in the hearing, but in the interest of time, since I'm over, I'm going to hand it over to Senator Heinrich.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Bright, Bill, at the legal direction of Congress, DOE has developed energy efficiency standards that have saved American families hundreds of dollars annually on utility costs. The current administration is set on reversing these cost-saving efforts and announced this week that they will eliminate many of these standards, which will undoubtedly raise energy costs for American families. Do you believe the actions announced by the administration are consistent with the federal judge's orders to update those standards? And how would you approach enforcing energy efficiency standards in your new role if you're confirmed?
Senator, thank you. At this point, I'm not at the Department of Energy, and so I have not been advising the Secretary and the program managers who are at the agency at this time regarding the actions that they've undertaken. And I have not had an opportunity to review those executive orders or the legal bases for the actions that have been taken. I know within the context of those statutes, there are statutory reforms that were undertaken by Congress in the later part of the early aughts and that related to those statutes that actually enhanced the capacity of the department to consider economic considerations, and some of that postdates some of the case law that I know is on the books and which many people point to in that area. So at this point, Senator, what I can commit to you is that should I be fortunate enough to be confirmed as the General Counsel, that I will, of course, work with the existing career staff and advisors at the Office of General Counsel to understand their existing legal reviews and then advise the Secretary and the program officials who are responsible for those policy decisions on their obligations under the laws and statutes, as well as the authorities that they have.
Mr. Prohaska, with electricity demand expected to grow for the next decade, I think many of us believe that we're going to need every electron that we can get for the foreseeable future. If confirmed, how will you make sure that ARPA-E is investing in a complete portfolio of next-generation energy technologies and not picking winners and losers?
Thank you very much for the question, Senator, and that is a very big part of the way ARPA-E operates. The way ARPA-E operates is we bring in the best program managers that we can find, and those program managers bring the best ideas that they can, and they're forced through a crucible of internal debates and external reviews to come out with some of the best possible programs and projects we possibly can. And part of that analysis is, how does this make sense in the overall energy portfolio and move the ball forward on behalf of the United States and the world, because these technologies do go and help the world at the end of the day in many cases. And so to answer your question, one of the reasons is we're going to take the best projects, and I promise that that's going to be the process with which if I am confirmed, RPE continues to move forward with the best projects, and not picking winners and losers necessarily, but understanding what makes sense in the energy portfolio that's affordable, secure, reliable, and gets us to the end goals.
Mr. Bright Bill, Congress has important oversight responsibilities over the department, obviously. If confirmed, will you commit to responding to members of this committee's requests for information regarding DOE's compliance with the law?
Senator, if I am confirmed, I can, if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed, yes, I can assure you that we will comply with the law, and insofar as the department is required to make responses to requests, we will do so.
So thank you. That is the right answer. On May 5th, I, along with a number of other members of Congress, sent Secretary Wright a letter regarding the department's suspension of energy programs, cancellation of executed awards and contracts, as well as mass reductions in staffing and changes to contracting policies. And I very much look forward to receiving a full and complete response to that letter.
Senator McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Heinrich, and welcome and congratulations to our 4 nominees. Mr. Brightbill, good to see you, Pennsylvania, and I think our fathers may have served together when your dad was majority leader, so it's great to have you here. And another Pennsylvanian and 2 members of our armed services, so we've got a great lineup here. I want to start with you, Mr. Manuel. The most recent U.S. government assessment of the Marcellus Shale from 2019 showcased the effects of technological advancement. In that assessment, the government estimated natural gas availability in the Marcellus rose from 2 trillion to 84 trillion to 97 trillion in under 20 years. Now, knowing where those energy resources are located and how much exist is crucial to informing our strategy for energy dominance and energy independence. Unfortunately, USGS government resource assessments can lag behind industry developments. So my question is, what is your plan to ensure timely and regionally relevant updates to those assessments? And do you anticipate a need to adapt the resource evaluation framework to better account for unconventional sources of natural gas like shale gas?
Thank you for that question. Thank you very much, Senator McCormick. The thing that people need to understand is that technology sweeps through one field after another, and it's swept through the oil industry, it's sweeping through mining and timbering and all these. When technology sweeps through, we have to back up and look at another methodology or modify the methodologies used to do resource assessments, because the newer technologies allow us to basically get at more of that resource, and eventually, when proven, we call it a reserve, okay? So if confirmed, I want to make sure of the date of these resource assessments at USGS, what they contain, and how they could be improved, and most importantly, do we have a bridge over to the private sector? Do we understand that technology that's right under our noses? And do have our scientists gone out into the fracking fields and other places and looked at these things? Very important, and it's going to inform the way we do resource evaluation, actually resource assessment, as we call it, okay? So that's an absolute definite thing that I would do if confirmed right away.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Prohaska, let me turn to energy demand and the fact that it's expected to grow radically, primarily driven by AI data center demand. And I believe nuclear energy, which of course Pennsylvania plays a very dominant role, will help meet that demand. Pennsylvania is second in the nation for nuclear energy production and home to much of the technology included in every nuclear energy reactor in the United States. You've already talked about this in previous questions, but let me ask you to be a little more specific. How do you anticipate ARPA-E supporting the development of nuclear energy technologies, and in particular, innovations in fuel cycle technologies? And how would you think about the process for prioritizing and investing most heavily in the appropriate technologies?
Thank you very much for the question, Senator. Going back to one of the things that I worked on that came to fruition following my time at ARPA-E as Chief of Staff was working on expanding some of the authorities of ARPA-E to address some of these challenges exactly, particularly nuclear waste and the cycle that exists there. As the industry develops, there will be, and this is where the kind of the tricky part of ARPA-E is, because we want to move technologies into industry, but we also want to work with industry partners to understand what they're not doing. And so what I believe would help that cycle, and to answer your question, is engaging the industry, engaging the people that are on the cusp and or even doing some of these activities, and understand what their big pain points are, and build that relationship, which is a lot what I did as the Chief Commercialization Officer of the department, is work with public partnerships, work with private industry to understand where their pain points are, to make sure that we're not doing something that we're just taking something off the plate of private industry that they could do, but something that really is, to the ARPA-E motto, high risk, high reward technology, to get further down the path of making those actionable and efficient technologies that they can really utilize and maximize the nuclear fuel, the nuclear process, and the nuclear industry as a whole.
Very good. Thank you.
I believe Senator Hickenlooper is up next. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank all of you for your willingness to put yourselves through this and take on these challenges. Mr. Brightbill, I am a strong proponent of bipartisan permitting reform that includes targeted litigation reforms on various issues. The House bill, they've proposed a radical overhaul of our judicial review system by proposing a kind of pay-to-play or pay-for-play scheme. In your view, if someone pays or a company pays 125% of the estimated cost of your environmental review, the idea is that judicial review would no longer apply. And do you believe that allowing companies to pay for the right to avoid judicial oversight or judicial scrutiny gives communities and tribes sufficient ability to amend or challenge or change specific projects?
Senator, first of all, I appreciate the opportunity to continue to talk about NEPA reform. As Senator Lee knows from my time in his office, I could geek out about this for a very, very long time. So as to the specific House bill that you're referencing, I've candidly not seen the bill or the provision that you're referring to. And based on what you're describing to me, I'm not candidly able to respond to it in total because I'm not aware of what the ultimate policy.
Well, it's just basically if you pay a higher rate, you are exempt from judicial oversight. In other words, the courts have no role in approving the permit.
I think Senator, I candidly want to look at the entirety of the bill and what the other reforms are and see how they tie in with other provisions of the bill before I would opine as to that particular provision. Want to understand the total context.
Okay, Mr. Prohaska, and I'm a big fan of ARPA-E. I think you have the opportunity to catalyze transformational energy technologies and accelerate some of the commercialization of those things, and I think that's just going to be a big part of our future here, and hopefully will involve a lot of Colorado companies in there as well. How can you ensure ARPA-E continues to serve as a springboard for these high-impact startups, the companies that really can be transformational, without sufficient long-term dependence on financing, federal financing?
Senator, first off, thank you very much for the question. I have no doubt that Colorado will play a huge role in that ecosystem. One of the things from an outsider's point of view that I've always admired about Colorado is the major research institutions, whether it's NREL, Mines, Colorado State, University of Colorado, the list goes on, are very well coordinated. Not to mention outside of energy, but the quantum that is going on in the state is quite fascinating as well. So I commend the state on the efforts that go into that. To answer your question, I talked a little bit about it earlier, that part of the crucible of becoming an RPE project is the review process. And what we also do is once you are an RPE project, if confirmed, we'll continue this, active project management. That's continuous evaluation of these projects. It's a high-risk, high-reward effort. And you talked about how do we make sure some of these companies and products and technologies become companies. Part of that high-risk, high-reward means there's a high reward at the end, but that in between the high-risk and high-reward, a lot of things fall off. And that's part of kind of the RPE ethos is we're going to continue to actively manage projects, put the best minds towards it, look at it with a fresh point of view as often as possible. And then to your last point, to make sure it's not on a long-term federal pipeline of funding to continue on for eternity. We want to make sure that we're engaging with whether it's venture capital, investors, that we're continuing to keep them communicating with them and educated on what we're doing at RPE.
Thank you. And Dr. Mamula, first, just an idle curiosity. So you went to Penn State. Where did you do field geology camp? Yes, sir. Which one did you go to? Well, they had the Yellowstone research. So you went to the YBRA.
The YBRA, I've been there, and I've also been to the other one across the Appalachians.
Right. Yeah, I haven't been to that one, but I did do my same geological field work through the Yellowstone Bighorn.
Geologist, Senator.
There can be no closer tie than to have done the same field geology camp.
Together. Yeah.
USGS, obviously critical for so much we're working on. I'm going to be very brief in this question. Water-focused science is key for us in Colorado and the drought-prone West, just because if you can't measure something, you're not going to be able to manage it. And yet we've seen severe cuts at the USGS. The threat in this essential work and the integrity of these long-term data resources, and that data, keeping that data in place is critical. Can you make that, are you willing to say, absolutely, you make that a priority to maintain those systems of measure that we've been using and to expand those data sets?
Oh, Senator, absolutely. Look.
Yeah.
Senator, this has to be a priority, and if confirmed, I'm going to make it my business to make sure it is. Now, the data set integrity, is that what you're getting at?
Well, the cuts in funding, they've cut almost a third of the budget. So and part of that means that they're talking about just we don't need to save this data because it doesn't seem relevant now. Whereas in science, mostly, as you know, oftentimes data that doesn't seem relevant today, 5 years from now, seems really relevant.
Right. If confirmed, and I'm going out there, and we're going to look at our data collection, and, you know, with the capacity of data storage today, there's really no need to dispose of data. We can hang on to data as long as we need to, and by the way, there's plenty of data that can be digitized and put to work, again, years and years after it was first published. So this is a priority. USGS is a data factory. So this is what's produced there should be also saved. And
thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate it very much. And Ms. Pierce, I've got questions for you, but I'll put them in writing.
Yeah.
I yield back. Thank you.
We'll turn now to Senator Hoeven, who twice in the last couple of weeks has been my stunt double as I've been called into other hearings. I'm told he's going to do his questioning today entirely in Spanish, which should be exciting.
Muchas gracias, mi amigo. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and to the ranking member. Appreciate both of you. And thanks to all of our witnesses that are here. Mr. Mamula, thanks for coming in to visit with me yesterday. And I do have to warn you before Hickenlooper gets out the room that you got to be careful with him because I think he's a geologist too. So you can't spoof him like you do the rest of us. You know, he knows his stuff. And he was a governor too, so we really like him a lot. So thanks again for being here. You know the story in the Bakken in my state. You know, when I was governor back there in 2000, there wasn't the horizontal drilling and the shale plays could be produced from a technological standpoint, you could get oil out of them, but you couldn't do it, you know, on a commercially viable basis. And so we actually started with our state geological survey to do that analysis. It actually had been done off some work Price had done in Colorado, in Senator Hickenlooper's state, which you're probably familiar with. And then we followed up at the state level and actually started making inroads in it. They tried in Montana a little bit because they thought maybe the geology was a little better, proved it wasn't, plus the fact they had more regulatory burden over there because we really created an environment with incentives and regulatory environment, favorable regulatory environment. But the geological analysis was critical, and then once we finally got it going, then we got U.S. Geological Survey to engage, and then once they did it, of course, then companies really started coming and took off. That was about 2006, 2008. Right. So it shows the importance of what you do in terms of producing more energy in this country, because that was a critical, you know, it was critical, and I kept trying to get them to come in, and that's how we eventually did. So now we're in situations in the shale plays where we have to put legs on those shale plays, right, in the unconventional areas because of the declines in the curves and all that. So will you work with us, and tell us how you'll work with us to make sure that we're able to go in with tertiary recovery methods? So, for example, pulling the CO2 off coal plants and putting it downhole for a CO2 flood. And talk about that, because this is a big deal if we're going to get to this energy dominance and sustain it. Talk to me about how you can help us get that done.
Okay, great question, Senator Hoeven, and thank you. When you add the North Dakota Geological Survey and the schools you have there to my Texas A&M and Penn State, we are ready to rock on these reserve estimates. So
no pun intended with the ready to rock bit. Yeah.
But Senator, the USGS, the more it's engaged with our industry, the better for both sides of that equation. Look, the USGS has a great ability to look at a map, produce a cross-section, and give us a 3D block view of that piece of real estate and the minerals and oil, gas, and other endowments in that. So in the case of North Dakota, I think if there was any hesitation, perhaps maybe part of that was not on federal land. Maybe they felt they wouldn't, but federal land, absolutely. That is the USGS Organic Act, okay? Go off of federal land, maybe it wasn't quite as okay. But if I'm confirmed, Senator Hoeven, I'm going out there and it's going to be all hands on deck for all lands, because there's no need or reason to strand a resource. And to your point on tertiary recovery, if we have excess carbon dioxide here and a need for it over here to drive tertiary recovery, we get a twofer. We take it from here and we put it over there. We don't want to waste our resources. Things that don't come out of the ground, Senator, as I said to you yesterday, their value is essentially zero.
Yeah, no, that's right on. It is a twofer, and would you commit to come out to North Dakota with me? We have intertwined, we have state, fortunately, we have a lot of private, and I know that's a frustration for our chairman, is they have so much public, but we have a lot of private, and then we have state, and then we have Native American, and we have a lot of federal, and it's all intertwined, and one can impede the other if we don't all work together.
If confirmed, Senator, I commit to you to come up there and look at it, and I commit to the survey that we re-examine land ownership and maybe dispatch with the boundaries. They're more, as far as geology, they're kind of artificial anyway.
Right.
An ore deposit doesn't care where it's located, on federal, state, or private, but it's sitting there saying, wow, develop me. So this is something I'll look into, and you have my word on that.
Mr. Chairman, just one final quick question, if I can beg your indulgence. The geothermal, we're doing a lot more in geothermal. Is there any synergy that you see between the energy industry in terms of oil and gas and the geothermal opportunities?
Senator Hoeven, sometimes if you have an abandoned well in the oil industry, in the energy industry, or a gas well, oil well, whatever, that well maybe serves a dual purpose. Maybe it has another life, and it's deepened into the geothermal pool that's available. In North Dakota, I don't know, we're going to take a look at your geothermal resources there, okay? Then we're going to say, okay, if we can get this amount, then you have geothermal reserves. And then the easiest way to get to it is maybe use something that's already in place. Senator, if I may, it's kind of like mine tailings or metal mine dumps laying on the ground. To me, they're nothing but ore deposits on the surface. And it's the same with your geothermal resources there. If we can get at it an easier way, we should take advantage of it, absolutely. And you have my commitment to work with you on that.
Right, some of our wells are 2 miles deep, and then we go out vertically for 3 miles or more in multiple directions with 12 miles on one pad. So it might create some opportunities.
I think it's setting a stage for another energy play in North Dakota, i.e. geothermal.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Again, thanks, Mr. Chairman, appreciate it.
Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Prohaska, let me start with you. Do you support an all-of-the-above energy approach?
Thank you very much for the question, Senator. I support an all-the-above energy approach if it's reliable, affordable, and secure. I think we need to look at the
Do you
portfolio.
think solar and wind are reliable and affordable and secure?
There are some cases where that very well could be, and there's also enabling technologies that could maybe enhance certain technologies, not particularly those two. But I think that's part of the opportunity ahead of us is to make sure we find out what is keeping, if anything, from affordable, reliable, and secure technologies and help that.
Thank you. Are there any specific areas of research that you believe ARPA-E must prioritize to remain competitive?
I would have to look at the portfolio because your question is if we have to maintain. I am not well in depth at the whole portfolio right now as it stands from many years ago when I was there. And looking at those projects as they evolve, that would be part of the evaluation.
Okay. In your written testimony, you acknowledge that new critical technologies are at an inflection point. Couldn't agree more. Absolutely. And please know that Nevada entities have leveraged ARPA-E funding in recent years to uncover exciting solutions such as innovative research with Nevada gold mines and the University of Nevada, Reno to study new techniques for the separation of rare earth elements from ores. There's so much going on. There's so much opportunity. But here's my question for you. In President Trump's fiscal year 2026 budget, he calls for a 57% cut to ARPA-E. 57% cut. So my question to you, if confirmed, how would you manage that, and what specific actions would you take to stand up for your agencies and the tools it needs? And will you then have to make priorities on which areas of research that you would support? And I would be curious what those areas would be.
Senator, I think with any, to first start with the areas, I would not dare sit here today and say I know. I think in something like an ARPA-E, an Advanced Research Projects Agency, and this high reward, high risk technology, the most dangerous thing that someone can say, particularly prior to
Can I
looking.
stop you? I'm sorry, because I
Yes,
only have so much time.
Senator.
Well, you keep talking about high risk, high reward. What is that? What projects are those? What are you talking about specifically?
I think it's the ability to put dollars for a exponential return to impact on the United States taxpayer and ensure that we're making the biggest bang for the buck and really shooting, as we talk about sometimes, moonshot type technologies. To answer your question, is we will maximize the resources that are at ARPA-E to make sure we are effectively and efficiently accomplishing the mission to deliver the best we possibly can for the U.S. taxpayer.
I only have so much time, so I'm going to jump to, and I apologize. I don't get a chance to ask you all questions, so we will submit some for the record. But Ms. Pierce, I did have one for you. But we'll submit it for the record because I know you're patiently waiting here. But there's one that I have to ask Dr. Mamula about because, as you know, Nevada is at the forefront of developing our nation's critical mineral supply chain and reducing dependence on China. And I've heard all of you comment to some extent that that is absolutely necessary. The mining industry in Nevada is bolstered by invaluable research conducted at our universities, including the Mackey School of Mines at the University of Nevada, Reno, through grants from USGS programs such as Earth MRI, State Map, and the National Geological and Geophysical Data Preservation Program. Our universities are able to create publicly available data regarding the location of critical mineral resources, to archive mineral compositions of different regions, and accelerate mine permitting by providing baseline geological data for prospective projects. I fear that without this research, Nevada and the rest of the United States may fall further behind in the race to develop reliable critical mineral supply chains. Unfortunately, in the President's fiscal year 26 budget, he proposes to slash the USGS by about $500 million and cut funding to universities. Yet, it says the agency will focus on achieving dominance in energy and critical minerals. Now, I understand that you're not currently at the agency, but can you explain how cutting critical research like this will actually help the U.S. achieve dominance in energy and critical minerals? And how would you manage that cut to your budget?
Senator Cortez Masto, thank you for the question. And by the way, Nevada is a great geology state. I go there every year, and and I know the people in your state geological survey. To answer your question, let me take it this way. The federal funds from USGS flow down to the state geological surveys. It's one of the greatest partnerships you can believe, and it's just fabulous. The state surveys are the engine of a lot of our mapping, so we have state and federal working together. Senator, I'm not privy, or I don't understand the nuances of the President's budget because I'm not in there yet, but I will make it a very #1 priority to look at that budget, whether whatever cuts or plus-ups, whatever, and make sure that we have the money to drive the program forward, which is the President's priority. That is to make the critical minerals, rare earth, and technology metals a national priority because it is a national security priority. And that would be my focus from day one, minute one, when I walk in that building, if confirmed.
Will you promise me this? Once you get in there and the cuts are made, and they are going to be significant cuts to you, including cuts to grant funding, that when whatever little funds that you do have for grant funding, that you do not make a decision that you're going to pick blue states over red states?
Senator, I need to take a look at that. I can't envision when we do geology and funding and cooperation between state, federal geology, that there's a blue state, red state. Senator, let me just go on the record and say, the critical minerals, our energy, our rare earth, our technology metals, I hope, and sometimes secretly I pray, that this is the greatest nonpartisan issue before us in our time. We have to.
And you would commit to keeping it nonpartisan?
Senator, we are scientists, and if we get into the weeds of politics, it kind of spoil our credibility, and I would never do that to the USGS.
Thank you.
Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the sages of New England, Ralph Waldo Emerson, said, "What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say." I have never been at a hearing where what's being done is at such variance with what is being said. Mr. Prochaska, you waxed eloquent about the talented and dedicated staff of ARPA-E and all the great work that they've done. Their budget's being cut by 57%. How do you justify all this nice talk about what you're going to do when your agency's being cut more than in half? You can talk till you're blue in the face, but what speaks here is 57% cut. Tell me, and you went through your entire testimony, all of your answers to your questions until you got to Senator Cortez Masto, and never once mentioned renewables. The fastest growing, cheapest source of electricity in the United States today. And let me read from the budget document. Green new scam technologies are not supported. That's in the ARPA-E budget document. Green new scam technology are not supported. That means no renewables, right? You've got an order from the President of the United States, no renewables. Is that correct?
That is not correct, Senator.
Well, so he didn't mean new, what does he mean, green new scam technologies? He's talking about solar and wind. Everybody knows that.
Senator, I can't opine on what the definition of that language is. I can commit to, if confirmed, that the ARPA-E and the portfolio that we investigate and we look into will include all technologies, as
So
I
it was
mentioned
just
to
a
the senator.
coincidence that when you listed the technologies, the nearest you got to renewables was a mention of geothermal last. You never mentioned solar and wind, and you used the code word reliable, which is a new code word for we don't like solar and wind because they're intermittent. But as you indicated in your answer to Senator Cortez Masto, when you have batteries with solar and wind, it's base load. Is that correct?
Senator, it very well could be. It depends on the situation. But the portfolio that we will investigate will include all technologies, and reliable is important to the energy that we need for the future to fund some of the emerging technologies that we've talked about.
I appreciate what you're saying here. What I'm going to watch is what you do.
Understood.
Because budgets are policy. And this budget, the policy of this budget is a drastic cut, more than half in ARPA-E. I think one of the most important agencies in the United States government. It's where fracking started. The shale revolution started with research funds from the Department of Energy. And we're talking about a more than half cut. So I'm gonna watch what you do and not what you say. Now, Mr. Mamala, you talked about the importance of data and science and all of those kinds of things, and yet there have been reports in the last few weeks that biological research in the USGS is being cut entirely, and 25 water science centers, which are stream gauges measuring storms. I get the feeling this is like, if we don't measure anything on climate change, it'll go away. Is that what's going on here?
I don't think so, Senator. Thanks for the question. Let's discuss it. Again, I'm not at the survey, but I want to take a look. If confirmed, I want to go out and look at each and every single program, its budget and cuts proposed.
Well, somebody's already done that and cut your budget 37% before you even walk in the door.
Yeah, well, again.
That's done.
The cut.
Assuming Congress agrees, which I hope they won't.
Yeah, I don't know about that either, but I'm not familiar. But the program, what's the contents of the program that has a cut associated with it, I'm not familiar. I don't know what's being cut.
I thought you're pretty familiar with USGS.
I am, but I don't know what's.
Do you believe it's appropriate to cut all of their biological research programs?
Well, I have to see what they're talking about. If they're talking about.
All means all, as I understand it.
Yeah, well, I would be more comfortable, once confirmed, looking at that and saying, okay, is this a cut deserved, or should we actually have a plus up, or what? I want to be there.
How about eliminating 25 water research centers around the country? Is that a good idea? You talked rhapsodically to Senator Hickenlooper about data and how important data is. This is critically important data that appears we're not going to collect anymore.
I want to see, again, what cuts they're talking about. That'll tell me where the data is either being cut or not being cut, and then what's left on the table, then we say, yes, we can still do our mission with what has not been cut.
It looks to me like what's being cut is data that will be produced to demonstrate the danger of climate change to our economy, to our people, to our country, to our environment. That's if, and you know, not collecting the data doesn't mean the problem isn't going to be there. Collecting the data can alert us to where there are problems and where we can deal with them. I hope that you say you're going to look at this. The problem is, as I say, you're walking into a shop that's already been cut by more than a third. So, Mr. Chairman, this isn't personal for you people. I don't know you. I'm sure you want to do the right thing, but let's get real here and try to face the reality, and to come in here and talk, about how wonderful USGS is and how wonderful ARPA-E is, which I think it is, at the same time that it's being cut. These two agencies are being cut in one case by over 50%, by other case by more than a third. It just doesn't pass the straight face test. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks so much, Senator King. We're going to wrap up in a moment. Any additional questions that we may have had will be submitted in writing. Before I do the closing wrap-up, I'm going to turn to Senator Heinrich for some additional thoughts.
I have a number of questions I'll be happy to submit for the record for the rest of you. I think what you're hearing from Senator King and others on this panel is the fact that budgets are a reflection of our values. And what we see in this budget is that is a disregard for science. When you are saying that two of the most preeminent institutions of science that have benefited our economy over and over again should get a almost 40% and almost 60% cut. You're saying we don't value science, and I hope this Congress will send a very different message.
Thanks, Senator Heinrich. I do want to thank the witnesses for coming today. Each of you comes with a wealth of knowledge, and you've been very helpful today. So thanks for your cooperation. Thank the senators also for being here and taking the time to cast the votes and to question. Questions for the record for the hearing will be due by 6 p.m. this evening. The record for the hearing will remain open for statements until 6 p.m. on Thursday, May 15th. Thanks again to the members of the committee. On behalf of the committee, I'm pleased to extend congratulations to all the nominees, including those we recommended favorably to the floor today and those who have gone through the process today during the hearing portion. I look forward to working with all the senators on the committee as we continue to consider each of the president's nominees within the jurisdiction of the committee in such a productive manner. I hope every senator on the committee will work with me to help persuade leadership on both sides of the aisle to bring these nominations to the floor as soon as possible. The meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.